Everybody, Andy here again. About a week ago I made a video called "Where's All the Good Music Gone?" And in that I was talking about the results of some surveys and how the sales of music generally have gone down right across the board. Digital downloads have gone up, but CD sales, album sales and that type of thing have gone down. Some single sales have gone up, but there's generally a decline in the amount of music that people were buying. After that, I happened to see a couple of articles which has really built up over the last few days. I don't know where it all started from, but obviously people feeling the same way as that I was, that the music wasn't there, but specific types of music, because another little survey came out that the top 100 singles here in the UK, um, in the past, generally a ballpark sort of figure, sort of 25% of those tracks in the top 100 singles of the year have been what you would class as rock tracks, rock music tracks. Now only 3 of them last year, and to be honest, a couple of them I'm not sure that I would class as rock either. And the only one, really, the really rocky one that was in there was an old one. Don't Stop Believing by Journey, which we know has come back because of the Glee thing and all that TV shows, which I did actually mention the way that they had brought some sort of music back and how old music was still there. And a whole debate started about rock being dead, and is rock dead because of what's going on. And I just want to read out a particular article, a magazine that I subscribe to actually. This is World Magazine, which I can well recommend actually, and they're not paying me a penny. Maybe they would give me a free subscription. But there's an article in there by one of my favourite journalists, a guy called David Hepworth, who you may remember if you live in the UK. Used to be on the TV quite a lot, and actually he's one of the main people behind the magazine. Now I'll read you this particular thing. I'll put my glasses on. Start of his column here. What do the following albums have in common? Hunky Dory by David Bowie, Led Zeppelin 4, Ram by Paul McCartney, Blue by Joni Mitchell, Every Picture Tells a Story by Rod Stewart, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, Sticky Fingers by Rolling Stones, Aqualung, Jethro Tull, Meddle by Pink Floyd, Nursery Crime by Genesis, Who's Next by The Who, and Tapestry by Carole King. He said, over and above the fact that you might find many of them in a list of the 100 greatest albums ever made, and also, as he points out, that some of those could be classed as the best album that particular band has made. Yes, okay, we might argue about that, but the common factor with all of those albums were released in 1971, and he also goes on to mention some others that were released in the same year as well. Other great albums that you would have heard of, no doubt, as well. And also mentioned the fact that there were a lot of good singles. It wasn't just albums, there were singles around. Now, when can you think recently where you've had a year that's produced the quality of music? Yes, I know I'm biased towards that music, and if you don't like that type of music, then yes, you're going to argue with me, and obviously if you're not of a certain age, you may not know the music anyway. But having been alive at that sort of time, and having owned and still own quite a few of those albums myself, I'm thinking, well, no, there hasn't really been a great year like that. And actually, I read an article not that long ago on the internet or whatever, in a magazine, stating that actually 1972, I think it was actually, they reckon, the best year for music. So that year wasn't even the best by people's standards anyway, and I'll agree, the year they were talking about was absolutely tremendous, 72, 73 or 74, I can't remember which one it was. But it goes back to what I was saying. When can you think of having a year anything like that? And this goes back to that whole debate. Yes, singles are different now. Yes, singles, rock music generally has always depended on album sales. People like Led Zeppelin in the UK never even released singles over here. Other people refused to go on top of the pops and that sort of stuff to sell the singles that they did make. So rock has always been a sort of an album genre, if you want. But even so, there still isn't that type of music around nowadays. But one of the factors behind that, I think, and something that did come out partially in some of the articles, and as I said, there's been a whole load of them, because everyone's saying, oh, getting on the bandwagon and talking about this, myself included, I suppose, having a vested interest, is the state of radio here in the UK. Wherever you are, and I know what it's like in America, although having been in America last year, people were still moaning about the state of radio over there, because I think it's sort of pretty well compartmentalised, I think that's the right word. You've got specific genres on specific stations, and you want a classic rock station, great. You want a hard rock station, you want an acoustic rock station, you want a rap station, you want a country station. You're all provided for, but you're stuck in one little groove, aren't you? You're never going to hear some country music on a rock station, or you're not going to be exposed to different different types of music. And that's the way that radio has gone in the UK as well, apart from the fact that everything is just so generic. You can turn on a radio station literally anywhere in the UK and it will sound exactly the same, partly because a lot of the time it will be exactly the same. It's the same station broadcasting the same thing with a few local links thrown in here, there and everywhere. And that is so frustrating. Things are being stifled. So the radio stations have so much power now. If they don't put rock music, guitar music or anything like that onto their playlist, you're just not going to hear it. Yes, I know that people who my sort of age tend not to listen to the Radio 1 or those type of youth orientated stations, I suppose, but it's not just people of my age that like rock music. Having been involved, as I said, with the Hastings Rock radio station, I know our listener base. Yes, we've got people up into their 70s, pensioners, etc. But we've also got teenagers and people even younger than that who listen. If they're not being exposed to this music, how on earth are they supposed to enjoy it? The only way they get exposed to it generally is via their parents. And that's what's happened with my children. That's what happened. Okay, my children don't necessarily like that type of music, but that's not the point. At least they've had the opportunity to listen to it and make their own mind up. If they're not exposed to it, how are these genres of music? And it doesn't just have to be rock music, it can be others as well. You try and hear jazz music or country music or something like that in the UK, and it's not very easy to do. So it's not just rock music, and the radio stations have got so much power, and the quality of radio generally is dire, I think, in this country, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. We're getting like the record industry, where we just have 2 or 3 big players in the country owning just about every single station. The local stations can't compete because they can't get the advertising and that type of thing. I know how much money it costs to put stations on. It is not easy. The station that I want is a pretty unique station, yes, but we could never do that full-time 365 days a year, partly because we're not allowed to, and there's another issue, but also we just never get the money to be able to do it. We just sort of call in favours for 28 days per year and just about manage to make ends meet because nobody gets paid for it. If you're a commercial organisation, it's a different thing. So if you've got big companies running radio stations, running the music industry generally, and there's quite a few sort of parallels there. That's why we're in the sort of situation we are now. Also, I was reading in this particular magazine about live music venues and the way that they're going down the tubes as well. They're shutting up shop. Yes, there's a lot of them, and as with all these things, you could possibly do with the thinning out. But one of the reasons is that the big players are in there now, buying up all the venues. You think of it in the UK, you can think of the what used to be big venues have now got breweries after them, or they're called the O2 Arena, or the Carling this, or the something or other that. Those people, they're sponsored, and that has an influence on who plays at those particular venues. They play at those venues and they play at all the other Carling Apollo venues around the country or something like that, or all the O2 venues, and not anywhere else. There's that exclusivity type of thing. My eyes were opened by that article, and that's getting worse. It's driving the smaller people out. People trying to nowadays get into the music business, whether it be rock music or anything like that, or even trying to promote things. I know what it's like in the town that I live in, Hastings. It is awful trying to put original music on. I've spoken about this before, but you put that all together, is it any wonder that certain types of music can't get their head above the parapet, can't be heard, can't get on the radio, can't get on the TV, can't get a gig anywhere or something like that? And this is all essentially down to the sort of the big players coming in and buying up everything. Yes, that's capitalism, I suppose, but it stifles choice, and that's the reason that people don't go to gigs so much, or certain gigs, should we say. That's the reason that people don't buy so much music. And ironically, one of the big things that rock music does is sell live music tickets. The amount of music, the bands, the biggest grossing tours of 2010 were people like Bon Jovi, U2, people like Paul McCartney. They were, the vast majority of them, apart from the obvious Lady Gagas and that, the vast majority of them were rock acts. What does that tell you? Okay, a lot of them were over 40, so it makes you wonder, but people still want to hear that. They're going to pay all that money to go and see them. Surely that should tell the radio stations or the music industry something, shouldn't it? Anyway, I'd love to hear your opinions, your thoughts on this, but sorry to keep going on about this, but I'd say that article and all the other articles, etc., just sort of sparked a bit a thought in my head. So I'd love to see, excuse me, another year like 1971 or 1972, but I'm not so sure that I'm ever going to see that in my lifetime, and that's pretty much exactly what David Hepworth said in that article as well. That's a great shame, but it's hardly surprising when you look at the quality of some of those albums, but we can but hope, can't we? Anyway, thanks for your time. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.